we call that as just this instant. You can think about just this instant now, but nevertheless, time is continuing to progress in a linear fashion. So this maybe in a more everyday sense, we have a clock like that. So we think, okay, this instant now, that's now. Okay, well, now's moved, this is now, this is now, this is now, this is now. So we're always moving from now after now after now as different instants of time. So we just think now just happens to be this instant, and now, oh, now that's past, it's this one now, it's gone. And there are these instances that haven't arrived yet, so we're sort of moving along like this through time. This is a very, very common sense notion of time. We think about our lives like that, isn't it? We're born, this tiny little being comes out, and then we start to grow, and then we look at our photos, and we're getting older and older. We have this, there's this object that's persisting through time. It's going from now to now to now, and slowly degrading, and then at some point our bodies disappear. So I think everyone can relate to such a notion of time consciousness. It's very, very deeply rooted in all of us. Yeah, so is it? The question is this the reality? Is this the real time? Okay. So now I move on to Zen Master Dogen, and I would like to leave you with an impression of what his notions of time were. And they come out of a chapter of that 96 fascicle book I told you about, and this particular chapter is called Uji. And Uji in Japanese means being time. So Dogen doesn't talk about time on its own. He talks about being time. So for Dogen, there is no separation. No separation to be made between being and time. And this is very, very unconventional. So as a scientist, this is a very, very unconventional view. Because normally we separate the state of a system from time. So when you put it on a graph, you have time on the x-axis, and on the y-axis you might have different things that measure the state of the system. These are orthogonal. Mathematically, this means they're at right angles. They're independent. They're not the same thing. Right? We distinguish them very, very clearly. And this is useful. We can develop very interesting models, some very, very useful models this way, but this is not what Dogen is saying. He said there is no separation to be made. Being and time are not orthogonal things. Right. So as we will see, we'll come to know a little bit more what Dogen has to say. So here he talks about time. This way, he says the time being, this is Uji, has a characteristic of flowing. Okay, so normally when we think about time, sometimes we use the metaphor that it flows. He says so-called today flows into tomorrow, today flows into yesterday, yesterday flows into today, and today flows into today. Tomorrow flows into tomorrow. Then he says, because flowing is a characteristic of time, moments of past and present do not overlap or line up side by side. Here is Dogen saying this notion of a linear time of instants, this is not what time is. It's not this linear notion of instances. He's denying that here. So essentially we put a line through that now clock full of instances of time. And then also Dogen is denying this objective realism. This is in the same chapter. He says, in your study of flying, if you imagine the objective to be outside yourself, and this is a wonderful, Neil Armstrong, maybe some of you remember this. He was on the moon, and he did this wonderful photo of the Earth. So he was there as an observer looking out at the universe. From the moon, he saw a wonderful object called the Earth, and then further out into the universe. Dogen says, if your study of flying, if you imagine the objective to be outside yourself, so that this objective reality is out there, and that you flow and move through hundreds of thousands of worlds. So often we think we're this tiny little this being, and we're in amongst this huge universe of nebula and galaxies, and we're moving in and through all of that. He says, and we're doing this for hundreds of thousands of eons and myriads of eons. He's saying you have not devotedly studied the Buddha way. Essentially saying if you view the universe or reality in this way, then you haven't studied the Buddha way. The suggestion this is not the right way to view the world. So, In other words, the summary of that is that Dogen is not an objective realist with that statement. So he's already put a red line through linear notions of time.